If you really think about it, games only became the narrative-focused stories that we know them as today fairly recently. You don't have to go back too far in time, and it was all about getting a high score, and the ending might just be a screen that said congratulations across the front. That was then though, and this is now, and it's become ever critical to really stick the landing, especially in story-based games nowadays. And it's just hugely satisfying when a game that's already been great all the way through just puts the icing on the cake right at the very end and gives you something to think about when you finish playing the game. Conversely, there's nothing worse than a good game that's just ticking all the boxes from the start right up until the end, and then right before the credits roll it just falls at the last hurdle. So the following list is 10 times that I think games got it absolutely right in the greatest video game endings of all time. So just a quick list of ground rules first before we get on with the list. First of all, this is just simply my list. It's only games that I have played, so if your game isn't on the list, that could be why. I maybe just haven't played it before. Secondly, it can be gameplay, it can be cinematics, it doesn't matter. I'm going pretty loose on this one. Third on the list is one game per series, otherwise I would just fill this entire list with Metal Gear games. And lastly, this is your first and only warning: spoilers for absolutely everything in this list. And with that, let's mosey. Number 10. Taking us all the way back to 1994, Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo has to have been one of the very first times gaming attempted to go for a dramatic, fully animated and playable ending, and actually succeeded. Finally reaching the containment layer of Mother Brain, the evil biomechanical AI and final boss of the game, series protagonist Samus Aran is left to battle with the dinosaur-like form. Desperately firing all of her weaponry into the creature to no avail and becoming exhausted, the player is left to watch their own demise at the hands of the final boss. When in one of the most adrenaline-soaked scenes in all of gaming, the series' titular Metroid arrives in the nick of time, draining Mother Brain of her powers and supercharging Samus, saving her life and giving her the means to defeat Mother Brain and escape the planet, but sacrificing itself in the meantime. Games just didn't do bittersweet and melancholic stories like this before Metroid, in a game that was light years ahead of its time. Number 9. That game company released Journey exclusively on PS3 and forever changed the gaming landscape. Among a sea of brown and grey shooting games, it stood as a colourful beacon to gamers who wanted more out of their games than being insulted by a 14-year-old on Call of Duty. In its roughly 3-hour runtime and with its complete lack of dialogue or instruction, the game manages to convey an emotional story like no other before or since. Although the story is very much open to interpretation, from the start your destination is clear. Make it to the distant mountain. Running, floating and puzzling your way through a dreamlike landscape that hints at ancient civilizations and a deeper lore. As you finally trudge your way, exhausted from the journey, to the top of the beautiful snow-covered mountain, you collapse in the snow and seemingly die. Now imbued with the power of your fallen ancestors, you gain the power to soar the rest of the way to the top of the mountain in a metaphor for death and rebirth. Number 8. The culmination of possibly one of the greatest trios in all of gaming, Grand Theft Auto 5's ending has everything you've come to expect from Rockstar. Violence, humour, and the kind of sharp dialogue that you just don't get anywhere else. The fact that the game has multiple endings that you as the player determine is just the icing on the cake. However, realistically, only one of the 3 choices ever felt like the true ending.
I picked C. Ain't that a bitch?
When Franklin, Michael and Trevor put their misfit differences aside, cut the strings off their puppet master and ride off into the sunset. Number 7. Back when the Assassin's Creed series still actually had some semblance of a coherent plot, Assassin's Creed 2 had my favourite ending of the series. Series protagonist Ezio Auditore finally stumbles upon the fabled Apple of Eden, and in doing so discovers a much larger plot at hand. Seeing a vision of the ancient Minerva, Ezio himself isn't sure what's going on, but he didn't need to be. As Minerva looked directly through him to address Desmond, breaking the fourth wall and addressing you as the player directly with her gaze, probably the greatest moment in all of Assassin's Creed, and it's really a pity that they completely dropped the ball with the story ever since. Number 6. Finally completing the arc of his rageful vengeance, mortal man Kratos manages to defeat and kill the god of war Ares. Unfortunately, he doesn't get his reward of forgetting his former sins and decides to end his own life. Walking off the highest mountain in Greece, Kratos tries to end his own suffering. And by the way, displaying the greatest looking toes for the PS2. However, in a bittersweet revelation, the gods raise him from the sea and bestow upon him the new title and abilities of the God of War, as Kratos becomes his namesake and secures his place in gaming legend.
Number 5.
In what felt like a little bit of an homage to The Last of Us Part 1, Uncharted 4's prologue opens with a young girl waking up in her bedroom and looking for her parents. Except her parents are Nathan and Elena Drake. She proceeds to discover the truth of her parents' past with many nods to the previous games in the series. This was the perfect way to wrap up Nathan Drake's adventures by passing the torch on to his daughter and having him explain who he really is.
Number 4.
Red Dead Redemption 1 sees former outlaw gang member John Marston partake in a revenge tale at the behest of the government agents who have his family to kill his former gang members. With the promise of a peaceful life with his wife and son, John murders all of his former friends in an attempt to redeem his former life's mistake. Finally achieving his goal, John gets to experience a brief period of happiness until the government hatch their sinister final plan. In the ultimate act of betrayal, they show up to gun him down in his family home. An unfair tragedy befalling a good man. Thankfully, the game picks back up a few years later and lets us, now playing as John's son Jack, take the final revenge on those who murdered his father. A bittersweet ending, however, as John is avenged, but Jack is now an outlaw like his father, which John never wanted.
Number 3.
As the prequel to one of the greatest games ever made, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core had a lot of material to work from, and its ending managed to improve one of the greatest scenes from the original game. Fighting his way through scores of Shinra troopers, Soldier First Class Zack finally succumbs to his wounds, but has cleared the way for original protagonist Cloud to make it to safety. Cloud, suffering from the Mako poisoning, regains his consciousness just in time to hear a few final words from his blood-soaked best friend and mentor as he passes on his living legacy and the famed Buster Sword and fades into legend as a true hero, and opens the way for Cloud to cement his own legacy on gaming forever.
Would you say I became a hero?
Yes, I would.
Number 2.
The Last of Us puts you in the shoes of Joel, a smuggler in a post-apocalyptic virus-infected world that is completely unforgiving. Having already lost his daughter at the start of the game, he is tasked with transporting Ellie, the one human who is immune to the virus and can be used to create a vaccine, across the country to the people who can make it happen. Across their journey, they become a surrogate father and daughter to each other, as they've both lost everyone and everything before each other. The trust and father-daughter relationship they develop is masterfully realised the entire time. Upon completing their journey, Joel finds out that Ellie will die in the production of the vaccine, and completely unable to lose a second daughter, decides in the heat of the moment to kill the fuck out of everything that he comes across and save his daughter, selfishly dooming the entire human race. Then, in his final act of betrayal, he lies to Ellie's face that it wasn't going to work. Giving us one of the greatest cliffhangers in all of gaming, Ellie accepts his answer, but only on a surface level of a daughter doing what her father has asked her to do, yet knowing something doesn't add up. To be continued. So before we get to number 1, just a quick reminder that if you are new to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. It would help me out a lot, and I'll keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thank you very much, and on with the list.
Number 1.
Throughout the course of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, Naked Snake, soon to be known as Big Boss, learns that his benefactor, the Boss, has defected to the Soviet Union. His hand now forced by being on two opposite sides of the political divide, he is forced to do battle and eventually kill the only woman he ever cared for, with Hideo Kojima making us as the player pull the trigger mid-cutscene. It's only after her death, however, that Big Boss learns that she never defected at all. She was a double agent who had to maintain the facade. In the ultimate act of patriotism, she allowed herself to die at the hands of her student without saying a word to give up her cover. Now completely disgusted by the government's complicity in her death, Snake refuses to shake the hand of the man who bestows upon him the title of Big Boss. He has one final salute at the disgraced boss's unmarked grave as the only man who knows that she was a true hero. Did I miss your favourite ending in a game? I'd love to know about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you're new to the channel, do subscribe and stick around. I'll be doing plenty more videos like this one. In the meantime, enjoy some of my other content if you've got the time. I've also made a top 10 best intros, maybe you'd like that one. I do plenty of reviews and even some music. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, and as always, stay safe.